bustling city of
What are
Los
you
Angeles.
doing?
Inside
Stop
the
this at
luxurious
once!
mansion of billionaire Richard Hayes, a quiet secret was unfolding. While everyone believed that his daughters, Emily and Sophia Hayes, grew up surrounded by wealth and endless privilege, the truth was far different. Behind the marble walls and golden chandeliers, it was the humble maid, Caroline Turner, who had been secretly feeding the little girls every single day for 5 long years out of her own pocket. No one knew until one shocking moment years later revealed everything. Caroline was not just a maid. She was a woman of compassion, working day and night to keep the mansion spotless. Yet whenever she noticed Richard's daughters being neglected during busy business trips or elite gatherings, her heart ached. With her modest earnings, Caroline bought fresh milk, fruits, and warm homemade meals for Emily and Sophia. She never told anyone, not even the girls, where the food came from. To them, she was just Miss Caroline, the maid who always cared. Over the years, Caroline sacrificed her own comfort. While others saw her as just a servant, she quietly became a mother figure in the shadows. But after 5 years, Caroline had to leave the mansion. She grew old, her health declined, and she quietly disappeared from the Hayes household without explanation. The daughters, who were still young, never realized who had truly cared for them. Fast forward 6 years later, Richard Hayes hosted a grand charity gala in New York. Emily and Sophia, now grown teenagers, stood beside him as guests admired their elegance and kindness. But then, something happened that froze the entire room. At the grand charity gala in New York, chandeliers sparkled above the guests. Music filled the air, and Richard Hayes, one of the country's most admired millionaires, proudly stood with his 2 daughters, Emily and Sophia. They had grown into elegant young women, admired for their beauty and grace. Guests whispered about their poise, believing their wealth and privilege had shaped them into who they were. But that night, something was about to happen that would rewrite everything people thought they knew about the Hayes family. As the clock struck 8, the tall doors of the ballroom slowly opened. An older woman dressed in plain and somewhat worn clothes stepped inside. She walked carefully, her hands folded in front of her, her eyes lowered as if she didn't belong in such a glittering place. The security guards hesitated, but allowed her in after recognizing her name on the guest list. Whispers spread through the crowd. Who was she? Why was a woman like that invited to such an exclusive gala? It was Caroline Turner, the very same maid who had once lived quietly in the shadows of the Hayes mansion. Time had aged her face. Her hair carried streaks of silver, and her back was slightly bent. To most of the guests, she looked like a stranger. But to Emily and Sophia, the sight of her was like seeing the light of home. Their eyes filled with tears instantly. Without hesitation, they broke away from the crowd, rushing toward her, ignoring the shocked gasps around them. Miss Caroline, Emily cried, her voice trembling. Sophia clung to her, tears streaming down her cheeks. The room fell silent as the girls embraced the humble woman with all their hearts. And then, in front of hundreds of powerful people, the truth spilled out like a flood. Emily, her voice breaking, told the crowd how Caroline had secretly fed them when they were little, how she had tucked them into bed when their father was away, and how her gentle hands had made the cold mansion feel like home. The audience turned to Richard Hayes, waiting for his reaction. The billionaire stood frozen, his face pale, as though the ground beneath him had shifted. For years, he had believed his fortune gave his daughters everything they needed. But in that moment, he realized the truth that love, warmth, and care had not come from his millions, but from the quiet, selfless heart of a maid who gave without ever asking for recognition. The room erupted in applause, but Richard's eyes filled with shame and gratitude. Caroline, once invisible, was now the brightest soul in the room. Richard Hayes stood there, frozen in place as the truth settled over him like a heavy cloak. For years, he had worn the title of a successful businessman, a man who could provide his daughters with everything the world had to offer. But as Emily and Sophia clung to Caroline with tears streaming down their cheeks, Richard's proud image cracked. The whispers in the room grew louder, echoing through the grand ballroom like waves crashing against the shore. Every guest was staring at him, not with admiration but with quiet judgment. His heart pounded. Memories flooded his mind, years of being absent from his daughters. Lives because of business meetings, deals, and trips that he thought were for their future. He remembered the expensive toys, designer clothes, and vacations he had arranged for them, believing that was enough. But now, standing before him, the truth shone brightly. All the money in the world hadn't fed his daughters when they were hungry, hadn't comforted them when they cried at night. It had been Caroline, the maid he had once overlooked, who had carried the weight of their hearts. Tears welled in Richard's eyes, and for the first time in decades, he allowed himself to break. Slowly, trembling, he walked across the marble floor toward Caroline. The crowd hushed. What was the billionaire going to do? And then, in a moment no one could have predicted, Richard Hayes sank to his knees before the humble woman. Gasps filled the room. The sight of a powerful man kneeling before a maid shocked everyone. But Richard's voice was steady, filled with raw emotion as he spoke. "Caroline Turner," he said, his voice breaking. "For years you gave my daughters what I could not. You fed them when I was blind to their needs. You loved them when I was too busy chasing success. Tonight I want the world to know you are not just a maid. You are family, and I will spend the rest of my life honoring what you have done." Caroline's hands shook as tears streamed down her weathered cheeks. She had never sought recognition, never wanted glory. All she ever wished was to see Emily and Sophia safe, cared for and loved. But at that moment, standing in front of hundreds of influential people, she was finally seen, not as a servant, but as a mother figure who had given everything without expecting anything in return. Richard turned to the crowd. "From this day forward, Caroline will have her own home, her own place in our lives, and every honor she deserves. She is the woman who gave my daughters a gift that money could never buy: love, nourishment, and motherly care. No fortune, no mansion, no title could ever replace what she gave." The room erupted in thunderous applause. Guests rose to their feet, clapping, some wiping away tears. Reporters scribbled frantically, cameras flashed, but none of that mattered. What mattered was the truth, the quiet legacy of a woman who had changed lives through simple, unseen acts of love. Emily stepped forward, holding Caroline's hand. She raised her glass, her voice clear and steady as she addressed the crowd. "Millionaires can buy the world," she said, pausing as her eyes filled with emotion. "But we cannot buy the kindness of a woman like Caroline. She's the reason we are who we are today. Her love shaped us, not wealth, not luxury, but her heart." The words struck the crowd deeply. Some lowered their heads in reflection. Others clapped louder, moved by the purity of her speech. Caroline's heart swelled as Sophia hugged her tightly, whispering, "You'll always be our mom." That night, under glittering chandeliers and amidst the city's elite, the brightest star was not Richard Hayes, the millionaire. It was Caroline Turner, the maid whose selfless love had proven more valuable than all the riches in the world. And so her story lived on, not just in the Hayes family, but in the hearts of everyone present, as a reminder that true greatness is not measured by wealth, but by the quiet kindness we give when no one is watching.